Every Thursday at 3 p.m., I walked 7 blocks to a small brick house on Maple Street. Not to visit friends, not to drop off groceries, but to hand over $200 in cash to a woman who claimed my husband owed her everything. For 3 years, I believed I was doing the right thing, honoring a debt, protecting his memory, until the day a stranger at the grocery store looked at me with pity and said 4 words that made my blood run cold. "Your husband's still alive." What I discovered next didn't just shatter my grief, it revealed that the people I trusted most had turned my pain into profit, and that love, when twisted by greed, becomes the cruelest lie of all. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you, and if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. My name is Sarah, and 3 years ago I became a widow at 29. Or at least, that's what I thought. Michael and I met in college. One of those chance encounters in a coffee shop where he spilled his latte on my textbook and spent the next hour apologizing and making me laugh. We married young, maybe too young, but we were happy. He worked construction, long hours under the Texas sun, coming home with dust in his hair and stories about the crew. We lived in a small apartment, saved what we could, and dreamed about buying a house with a yard where our future kids could play. Normal dreams, the kind that make life worth living. Then came the accident. A scaffolding collapse on a job site in Austin. The foreman called me at work, his voice shaking as he explained that Michael had fallen 3 stories. He didn't make it to the hospital. The funeral happened fast. A blur of black dresses and casseroles and people touching my shoulder with that look in their eyes. The one that says they're grateful it wasn't them. Michael's mother, Patricia, held my hand during the service and whispered that we'd get through this together. His father, Frank, stood stone-faced by the casket, a man who didn't believe in crying in public. And his younger sister, Nicole, sobbed so hard she could barely stand. They seemed devastated. I had no reason to doubt them. 2 weeks after we buried him, Patricia called and asked if she could come over. She arrived with a manila folder and red eyes, sitting at my kitchen table like she was about to deliver more bad news. She explained that before Michael died, he'd borrowed money from them. A lot of money. $15,000 to be exact. He'd needed it for what he called an investment opportunity, some kind of partnership with a friend who was flipping houses. Patricia said they'd given him their savings because they believed in him, because he promised he'd pay them back within a year. But now he was gone, and they were struggling. Frank had medical bills. Nicole was in school. They needed help. I felt my stomach drop. I didn't know anything about this loan. Michael and I shared everything. Or so I thought. But grief has a way of making you doubt your own memories, making you wonder what else you missed while you were busy living your life. Patricia wasn't demanding. She was gentle, almost apologetic. She said she understood if I couldn't pay it all back at once, but maybe, if I could manage it, a little bit each month would help them stay afloat. She suggested $200. It seemed reasonable, painful, but reasonable. I was working as a dental assistant, making enough to cover my rent and bills with a little left over. $200 meant skipping dinners out, buying generic brands, letting my car insurance lapse for a month here and there. But it felt like the right thing to do. Michael would have wanted me to take care of his family, so I started paying. Every month on the 5th, I'd withdraw $200 in cash from the ATM and drive to their house. Patricia would answer the door with a tired smile, take the money, and thank me. Sometimes she'd offer me coffee. Sometimes Frank would nod from his recliner in the living room, watching a game on TV. Nicole was rarely there. She'd moved out, Patricia said, sharing an apartment closer to campus. The visits were brief, awkward, filled with the kind of small talk people make when they don't know what else to say. I'd ask how they were doing. They'd say, "Fine, getting by. Thank you so much for this." And I'd leave feeling like I'd done something good, even though it hurt. But after about 6 months, I started noticing things. Small things. Like the new truck in their driveway, a deep blue Ford F-150 with gleaming chrome. Frank said a friend sold it to him cheap, a favor. Then there was the vacation Nicole mentioned on Facebook. Photos of her smiling on a beach in Florida during spring break. Patricia explained that Nicole's roommate had paid for most of it. An early birthday gift. I didn't question it. I didn't want to be the kind of person who begrudged a grieving family small moments of happiness. But the things kept adding up. A new flat-screen TV visible through their living room window. Fresh paint on the house. Patricia's nails done, perfectly manicured every time I saw her. I told myself I was being paranoid, that grief was making me suspicious of people who didn't deserve it. Then one Saturday afternoon, I ran into an old coworker of Michael's at the grocery store. His name was David, a broad-shouldered guy with a kind face who used to come to our barbecues. He saw me in the produce section, and his expression shifted. Surprise mixed with something that looked like concern. We made small talk. The usual, "How are you holding up? I'm so sorry for your loss." Then he hesitated, glancing around like he wasn't sure he should say what he was about to say. Finally, he lowered his voice and told me he'd seen Michael about 2 months before the accident, and Michael had mentioned that things were tight financially but that he was working extra shifts to save up. David said Michael seemed stressed but determined, talking about how he wanted to take me on a real vacation, maybe to Colorado. He definitely didn't mention borrowing money or investing in anything. I stood there holding a bag of apples, trying to process what David was telling me. Maybe Michael hadn't wanted to worry me. Maybe he'd kept the loan a secret because he planned to pay it back before I ever found out. But the doubt was there now, small and cold in the back of my mind. I thanked David and finished my shopping in a daze, replaying every conversation I'd had with Patricia, every detail that didn't quite fit. When I got home, I pulled out the folder she'd given me that first day. Inside was a handwritten note, supposedly from Michael, acknowledging the loan. The handwriting looked like his, but I wasn't sure. We didn't exactly keep samples of his signature around. There was no contract, no official paperwork, just that one piece of paper and Patricia's word. I decided to do some digging. I started with our bank statements. Going back through the months before Michael died, there were no large withdrawals, no transfers that suggested he'd received $15,000. I checked his email, feeling guilty but desperate. Nothing. No correspondence about investments, no messages to friends about flipping houses, no mention of owing his parents money. I called a few of his buddies from work, casual questions about whether Michael had ever talked about business ventures. They all said the same thing. Michael was a straightforward guy, worked hard, didn't take risks with money. One of them even laughed and said Michael was the most careful person he knew, always checking prices twice before buying anything. The more I looked, the less sense it made, but I kept paying. I think part of me was afraid to stop, afraid of what it would mean if I was right. If Patricia and Frank were lying, then I'd been funding something terrible for months. If they were telling the truth, then I was the villain for doubting them. So I kept climbing into my car on the 5th of every month, kept handing over that cash, kept pretending everything was normal. But inside, I was unraveling. I started having trouble sleeping, lying awake at night staring at the ceiling, and wondering if the man I loved had secrets I never knew, or if the people who cried at his funeral were the kind of people who could look a widow in the eye and rob her blind. About a year into the payments, I noticed something that made my skin crawl. I'd gone to their house on a Tuesday instead of a Thursday because I had a dentist appointment and wanted to drop off the money early. When I pulled up, I saw someone leaving through the side door. A man, mid-30s, wearing a baseball cap and a jacket I recognized. It was Michael's jacket, the brown Carhartt he used to wear to job sites, the one with the tear on the left sleeve from a nail that caught it. I knew that jacket. I'd fold. Ed it 100 times, smelled the faint scent of his cologne on it, even after he was gone. Patricia had asked if she could keep it after the funeral, said it would help her feel close to him. I'd said yes, but this man wasn't Frank. He was younger, thinner, and he moved with a limp, favoring his left leg. I sat in my car, frozen, watching as he walked to a beat-up sedan parked down the street and drove away. My hands were shaking. I didn't go to the door. I turned around and went home, my mind racing with explanations that didn't make sense. Maybe it was a cousin. Maybe Patricia had donated the jacket and this guy bought it secondhand. Maybe I was losing my mind. I didn't know what to think anymore, but I knew I couldn't ignore it. That night, I called my older brother Daniel. He lived 2 hours away, worked as a private investigator, the kind of job that made family dinners awkward because he was always analyzing people. I told him everything. The loan, the payments, the new truck, the jacket, the man with the limp. Daniel listened without interrupting. And when I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that made my chest tighten. He said, "Sarah, I think you need to stop paying them and start watching them." He offered to help, said he'd make some calls, do some digging. I felt a mix of relief and terror. If he found something, it would mean I'd been a fool. If he found nothing, it would mean I'd destroyed what was left of my relationship with Michael's family over paranoia. Daniel started with public records. Within 2 days, he called me back with news that made me feel sick. There was no record of Michael ever taking out a loan, no co-signed documents, no official anything. He checked Michael's credit report. Nothing unusual. Then he looked into Patricia and Frank's finances. Turns out, they weren't struggling. Frank's medical bills were covered by insurance. Patricia had a part-time job at a salon that paid decently. They owned their house outright, no mortgage. Nicole's tuition was covered by scholarships and a small student loan in her own name. They didn't need my money. They just wanted it. Daniel suggested we set up surveillance, just a few days to see what was really going on. He parked down the street from their house with a camera, and I felt like a criminal, like I was violating some unspoken rule about trusting family. But I needed to know. On the second night, Daniel called me, his voice tight with anger. He said, "Sarah, you need to come see this." I drove over, and he showed me the footage on his laptop. There, clear as day, was the man I'd seen in Michael's jacket. He was entering the house using a key, staying for hours, leaving late at night. Daniel had zoomed in on his face. My heart stopped. It was Michael. Older, thinner, with a beard and that limp I didn't recognize. But it was him. My husband, the man I'd buried. The man whose ashes I'd scattered in the lake where we used to fish. I couldn't breathe. Daniel grabbed my shoulders, told me to stay calm. But how do you stay calm when your entire reality just shattered? He explained that this kind of thing, faking a death, was rare but not impossible. People did it to escape debt, legal trouble, bad relationships. But Michael? We were happy, weren't we? Daniel said we needed to go to the police, but I couldn't move. I sat in his car staring at the screen, watching a ghost walk in and out of a house like he belonged there, like he hadn't destroyed my life. The next day, I didn't go to work. I drove to the house and parked across the street, waiting. I don't know what I expected. Maybe some kind of confrontation, some answers. Around noon, Patricia left in her car, probably running errands. I waited another hour. Then the side door opened, and there he was, Michael, alive, breathing. Limping down the steps like this was just another day. I got out of my car and walked toward him, my legs moving on autopilot. He didn't see me at first. When he did, his face went white. He froze, one hand on the car door, staring at me like I was the ghost. I said his name, just his name, Michael. He didn't run, he didn't speak. He just stood there, and for a moment, I thought maybe I was hallucinating. Maybe grief had finally broken me completely. Then he said, "Sarah, please," and the sound of his voice, that voice I'd heard in my dreams for a year, shattered whatever was left of my composure. I started shaking, tears streaming down my face, and I asked him the only question that mattered. Why? He told me to get in the car, said we couldn't talk there. I should have refused. I should have called the police right then. But I needed answers more than I needed justice, so I got in. We drove to a park a few miles away, empty on a weekday afternoon, and sat on a bench under a tree that had lost most of its leaves. He looked older, worn down, nothing like the man I'd married. He explained that the accident was real, but he hadn't died. He'd been badly injured, spent weeks in a hospital under a fake name, paid for by money his parents had saved. The construction company thought he was dead because someone else's body had been misidentified in the chaos. It happens more often than people think, he said, especially in accidents with multiple casualties. He said he'd wanted out of the debt he'd racked up gambling, out of the pressure of being a husband when he didn't know how to be one, out of a life that felt like it was closing in on him. His parents helped him disappear. They claimed the life insurance, a small policy through his job, and used it to get him set up somewhere new. But then they realized they could get more. From me. Patricia's idea, he said, like that made it better. She figured I'd pay because I was loyal, because I loved him. And I did. For a year, I handed over money to fund a lie, to support a man who chose to let me grieve while he hid in his parents' house like a coward. I asked him how he could do it, how he could watch me suffer and not feel anything. He said he did feel something. Guilt mostly, but not enough to stop. He said he thought about reaching out a few times, but what would he even say? He'd made his choice. I asked if he ever loved me, and he looked away, which was answer enough. I stood up, told him I was going to the police, and he didn't try to stop me. He just nodded, said he figured this day would come eventually. As I walked back to my car, he called after me. He said he was sorry. I didn't turn around. The police were skeptical at first. A widow claiming her dead husband was alive sounded like something out of a movie. But Daniel's footage, combined with the misidentified body and the insurance payout, gave them enough to investigate. It took weeks, but eventually they arrested Michael, Patricia, and Frank for fraud. Nicole claimed she didn't know, and maybe she didn't. The trial was brutal. Every detail of my life picked apart in front of strangers. Michael pled guilty, took a deal for a reduced sentence. His parents did the same. I got some of the money back, not all of it, but enough. The life insurance company went after them for the payout. Michael's now serving 5 years. His parents got probation and restitution orders. I don't live in Texas anymore. I moved to a small town in Oregon, started over with a new job and a new name, not legally, just what I go by now. I don't talk about Michael. I don't talk about that year of payments or the moment I saw him alive. But I think about it. I think about how easy it is to trust people, how love makes you blind to things you should see. I think about the version of me who handed over that cash every month, who believed she was doing the right thing, and I feel sorry for her. She deserved better. So I'll ask you this. If you were in my place, if the person you loved most faked their death and let you suffer, could you forgive them? Do you think some betrayals are too deep to come back from, or is there always a way to heal? And what would you have done when you saw him standing there, alive, after a year of grief? Would you have called the police, or would you have needed answers first, even if they destroyed you? Let me know in the comments. I'd like to know if I made the right choice, or if there even was one. And if this story stayed with you, if it made you think about trust and love and the lies people tell, subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Because the truth is, the worst betrayals don't come from strangers. They come from the people we die for.